Isn't it great that we can animate in Photoshop? I think it's amazing. Now you can show your beautiful animation to the world, or just your client, or maybe you want it to share it on social media. So which files and settings are best for the job? Let's have a look at that.
Great, so now that you have an animation, you want to be able to export it and share it. So there are different situations. You might want to export it for professional reasons, to exchange with colleagues or a client, or you might want to export it for the web or just as a preview. And these imply different ways of exporting your animations. So we're going to look into about 4 different typical cases, typical types of exports. And the first one is going to be a QuickTime movie in good quality for professional reasons. So to export your animation, you can either go down there, there's an arrow here that you could click. Alternatively, you can go up there into File, Export, and then right here, Render Video. So these two do the same thing. I'm just going to click on the arrow here. And here it goes. So if I want to export for a particular client and I want to make sure they get the best quality of file, but it's also going to be a big file, I'm going to choose here in this area. I'm going to choose, it's already on this Adobe Media Encoder. I'm actually going to go for QuickTime. I've got different choices here, but QuickTime is good. In the presets here, I'm going to go for Animation High Quality. Now you could go for Uncompressed, but this is really quite heavy. So I mean, it's up to you. If you have plenty of space, and you can use that. But Animation High Quality is very good. I find that it's very good. You can compress a little bit animations like this one that have flat colors, so it's really good. So make sure you keep the document size to what it should be, the frame rate, it should be the document frame rate, etc, etc. To be fair, don't change most of these things by default. The one thing you want to be careful with is this one particularly, the alpha channel. So what is the alpha channel? The alpha channel is the transparency of the file. So in this case, say if we have a transparent background, we would want to make sure that the transparency is exported as well, and by default it isn't. So if you want to export the transparency, and I would suggest you click this all the time no matter what, you can just go straight. So it's on straight here actually, but by default I think it's on none, so put it on straight. Straight unmatted is the best one. And then you can just click render, and it will create this file, magicbox.mov, and you can decide where you want to put it exactly by just clicking on this button and choose a folder. Okay, in other situations when you're dealing with clients or professional projects, you might be asked to export not an animation file but a sequence of frames, and so that means that it will be exported as each frame will be exported individually as one image, and they will all be sequenced with a special number just to make sure they're in the right order. So if, for example, your client might want to have a sequence of JPEG frames, or it could be, but usually in professional environment people like to use a PNG file. The interest of the PNG file is that it's really good quality, and also you can export the transparency, so also known as the alpha channel. So let's go to the export, and let's export for a PNG sequence. In this case, we want to change this here to Photoshop image sequence. Okay, and here you can choose again different formats. Make sure you choose PNG, and you can change the settings of your PNG. I would strongly suggest that you keep this setting, large file size and faster saving. Now PNG files can be quite heavy to write down for some reason, and it can really take some time. So if you have a long animation, you might want to keep it a large file, but at least the export will be faster. Now if you're really short with space, you could always go for a smaller file size, but expect longer rendering times. Alright, so I'm happy with that. Now you'll see here it's got a starting digit number and the number of digits. So because at the end of every frame name, it's going to add a certain amount of numbers and digits to just make sure you got the count of the right count for every frame. So if you wanted to just have 3 digits, you could put just 3, and you can see. So what I would do usually is I would add a little dash up there just to separate the numbers from the name. That's all. And then it's very useful to make sure that all those PNG that you're creating go in a specific folder. So I would actually tick this box to create a new subfolder. So within the folder that you've chosen here, it will create a subfolder that you can call Magic Box, for example, and it will put all the PNG files within that folder, and that's really nice and helps staying organized. Finally, just make sure you keep the document size, the document frame rate, and as you can see here, the alpha channel is set to none. And again, I would strongly suggest that you always put it on straight. So no matter what, even if you don't have an alpha channel, it's just a good reflex to have and to make sure you always keep it on, because it's so easy to forget. Alright, so that would be your settings to export as a PNG sequence. Now, if you wish to export just to preview the animation, or just to share it easily on the internet, or to preview even for a client, and you wish to have a smaller file size, something easy to play that everyone can play on their phones or anywhere, then there is the MPEG-4 format. That is a very common file format that everybody is using nowadays. It's nice and compressed, and you lose a little bit of quality, but quite frankly it's very good nowadays. And you can choose whether you lose, how much quality you lose, and that gives you a more or less bigger or smaller file size. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to click here again, and in that case I'm going to change I'm going to go for Adobe Media Encoder, and here I'm going to choose H264, which is another word for MPEG-4 if you want. So that means MPEG-4. Now it's important to, there's loads of settings for MPEG-4 formats. So the simplest thing to do is to actually go into this preset area. You could choose high quality, medium quality, low quality. That's a good way to go about it. And if you want to put this on a tablet, an Android tablet, or an Apple tablet or phone, or if you want this standard HD format or NTSC formats, I mean, if you want any of these specific formats, it's nice to have all these ready set for you. So let's say you want to export it for YouTube, and that's probably can happen quite a bit. And then you can choose a 720p format or 1080p format. That sort of thing. Now you got to be careful. If you choose YouTube HD format, it will try to export in a format that is 16:9, yet our animation is square format, so you might need to change some things in the settings so that it will be exported still as a square format. You don't have to do that. You can just rely entirely on this and just click that and click render. It will still give you something that you can use in YouTube. But I will show you how to tweak that a little bit. Now, by default, you can try out high quality, medium quality, low quality, and see if you're happy with those results. Usually I would go for medium quality, and that gives me a really good MPEG-4 file. But sometimes I find that the YouTube settings are pretty good, so I would go down here and say, okay, I want to export 720p, so I'll click on this. But then all sorts of data is changed here. So for example, it's preset size, so I would have to change this back to document size. Here the frame rate as well, my frame rate is 12 frames per second, so it's changed it to 25. I would like to use my document frame rate. So you can change these back to normal, these two particularly, and then you can go ahead and hit render, and this will still be very perfectly usable in YouTube. But if you're unsure, just go for one of those three at the top, and it will give you a great result. So that's for sharing your animations or previewing your animations, etc., etc. Okay, finally we're going to have a look into how to export as a GIF. Okay, this is an animation that is pretty suited to be a GIF. Why? Because it's short, because it's got bold colors, and because it loops. So that's typically what you find in GIF animations. So this is a really good example of something you could export as a GIF. So in Photoshop there's a specific section for this. So I'm going to stop this animation. You go all the way up there to File and to Export, and it says here Save for Web. Okay, it's a bit, you don't expect that this may be for GIF because it's also for other things, but it's mainly for GIF animations. And here we go, got this little window here, and you got quite a few settings you can change. So I'm going to give you just some guidance here, and then you can play around with different settings. But okay, down here you got the image size. It's by default the size of your document. Now let's say you want to put this on Tumblr or something like this, and they have some restrictions about file size. I don't know, they used to be 500 pixels, so maybe if you want to reduce this to 500 pixels or something like this, you could put in 500, and you're good. And right away the preview is created here. Now you can play through by clicking here, and on the left you see the original, and on the right you see the GIF animation. Now here my settings are that we are using 128 colors. You can reduce this to, say, for example, 16 colors, and you can see all the colors that have been selected here and play through. And it's still not bad. It's pretty good because we have very few colors in this animation. So changing the number of colors will change the file size of your GIF. If you want to have an idea of how big it's going to be, well, it tells you here, right here, GIF. It says 30K, so that's a very small GIF indeed. Well, you could go, if you wanted to have all the colors, go up to 256. That's the maximum amount of colors you can have in a GIF, which is not huge, but enough usually. And then so that's taken the size of the file up to 50K, which is still very small, to be fair, so you could keep that. Then you got, here's the different settings here. I would suggest strongly that you keep this on one of the top ones here, selective or perceptual or adaptive. I've got it on selective. It works pretty well. Here, keep this on diffusion as well. When it comes to transparency, I usually prefer not to have the transparency. So if I were you, I would tick that off, and you can see it doesn't change the value that much here. Now transparency, it's in case you have an actual transparent background, but most of the time you probably won't. So make sure you tick it off. It actually gives you a slightly better quality of render. It's unfortunate that by default it puts it on, but there you go. That's pretty much all you need. The lossy here is at 18. You can take that down to 0 in this case, but you see there's a slight increase in size file, but yeah, it's up to you. The lossy, if you put it right up, you might lose some quality. It might start looking a little bit edgy and ugly, and you can see here that's not very pretty what's going on here. The file size is small, yeah, sure, but the render is a bit ugly. So take that down to very little, like less than 20, or if you want, just all the way down to 0. Right. That's pretty much it. Everything else I would leave it as it is, and then you can hit save, and then you can save that and enjoy your GIF.